Hello, everyone. I'm Yoshihiro Maruyama from the Australian National University. The title of my presentation is Moral Philosophy of Artificial General Intelligence, Responsibility and Agency. So the European Parliament recently proposed to grant the personhood of autonomous AI, which raises fundamental questions concerning the ethical nature of AI. Can they be moral agents? Can they be morally responsible for actions and their consequences? If so, how can they be punished? If AI has no consciousness and no feeling of pain, etc., how can we punish AI? So in this presentation, I address these questions, especially the possibilities of moral agency and moral responsibility in AGI. Moral agency is a precondition for moral responsibility, which is in turn a precondition for punishment. So I first address the moral agency status of AI in light of traditional moral philosophy, especially KANT, HUME's, and STRAWSON'S, and then clarify the possibility of moral AI, that is AI with moral agency. To this end, I consider things like the ethical Turing test, the moral Chinese room argument, and weak versus strong moral AI. Then I address the moral responsibility status of AI and thereby clarify the possibility of responsible AI, that is AI with moral responsibility. So these issues will be crucial for AI-powered techno society in the future, especially for post-human society after the development of AGI. In order to be a moral agent, AI must be able to make moral judgment on the basis of some conception of good and bad. What is then the origin of our moral judgments? Where do they come from in the first place? And there are two views on the origin of morality, that is Kantian and HUMEAN views. So Dennis says Hume's method of moral philosophy is experimental and empirical. By contrast, Kant emphasizes the necessity of grounding morality in a priori principles. Hume himself contrasts the two views as follows. There has been a controversy started of late, much better worth examination concerning the general foundation of morals, whether they be derived from reason, which is Kantian view, or from sentiment, which is Humean view. Whether we attain the knowledge of them by a chain of argument and induction, or by an immediate feeling and final internal sense, whether like all some judgment of truth and falsehood, they should be the same to every rational intelligent being, or whether like the perception of beauty and deformity, they be founded entirely on the particular fabric and constitution of the human species. According to Kant, moral judgment comes from human reason. Williams says our rationality is at the center of his picture of moral agency, the Kant's picture of moral agency. According to Hume, moral judgment originates from human emotions such as empathy and sympathy. Hume asserts that morality is determined by sentiment, and sentiment is based upon our feeling, as Hume argues that what each man feels within himself is a standard of sentiment. Kopinen explains Humean moral sentimentalism as follows. Our emotions and desires play a leading role in the anatomy of morality, and the key mechanism of sympathy is imaginatively placing oneself in another's position. Hume is clearly against the Kantian rational conception of morality in the following way. Reason is fully inactive and can never be the source of so active a principle as conscience or sense of morals. So Hume argues that moral cognition must be active, but reason is not active, and thus morality cannot be grounded upon reason. So this is Hume's argument against Kantian conception of morality. In the Kantian conception of moral agency, it suffices for AI to have reason in order to be a moral agent. In the Humean conception of moral agency, AI, if it's to be a moral agent, must have emotions such as empathy and sympathy. Put another way, in the Kantian conception, morality presupposes reason. In the Humean conception, by contrast, it presupposes emotion rather than reason. We call the Kantian and Humean concepts of morality, rational morality and emotional morality, respectively. The Kantian and Humean views are generally referred to as moral rationalism and moral sentimentalism. There are thus two kinds of moral AIs. Kantian and Humean moral AI, that is rational and emotional moral AI. So which conception of morality do we mean when we talk about moral AI? In this presentation, I first discuss Kantian rational moral AI, and then Humean moral AI, Humean emotional moral AI. AI, by definition, is more or less intelligent and thus arguably has some reason, which could be trained to make some moral judgments. Yet in the Humean conception, this doesn't really suffice for the status of moral agency. And the moral judgment must be rooted in emotion such as empathy and sympathy. Without them, they are vacuous, inadequate, or merely artificial moral judgments. Humean moral AI is thus harder to build than Kantian moral AI in this sense. For each of Kantian and Humean AIs, there are weak moral AI, that is simulated morality, and strong moral AI, that is intentional morality. The moral Turing test only tests behavioral morality, that is the quality of moral simulation. The moral Chinese room argument is a counter against the moral Turing test, just like the ordinary Chinese room argument is a counter against the ordinary Turing test. For the detail of this, please have a look at the preceding paper. And I'd like to proceed to the issue of moral responsibility. Moral responsibility is concerned with the freedom to act. Norman argues as follows: the freedom to act is probably the most important condition for attributing moral responsibility and also one of the most contested. We tend to excuse people from moral blame if they had no other choice but to act in the way that they did. We typically do not hold people responsible if they were coerced or forced to take particular actions. Does AI have the freedom to act? AI is programmed to behave in a certain way and therefore may have no free will. Yet, at the same time, AI can learn and transform itself on its own. So this is a subtle issue. Strawson argues that moral responsibility doesn't really require free will. Talbot explains this view as follows. Strawson focuses directly on the emotions, the reactive attitudes that play a fundamental role in our practices of holding one another responsible. Strawson's suggestion is that attending to the logic of these emotional responses yields as an account of what it is to be open to praise and blame that need not invoke the incompatibilist conception of free will. Indeed, Strawson's view has been interpreted as suggesting that no metaphysical facts beyond our praising and blaming practices are needed to ground these practices. Strawson thus regards the phenomenal practices of praising and blaming as grounding moral responsibility. So there is no need to appeal to metaphysical free will to ground moral responsibility. From the Strawsonian point of view, AI has moral responsibility if it allows for the aforementioned reactive attitude or phenomenal practices of praising and blaming. The Strawsonian perspective thus paves the way for embodying a morally responsible AI without invoking the controversial notion of free will. Okay, so that is, thank you for the details of the discussion. Please have a look at the proceedings paper. Thanks.